So our topic today is innovation. Why am I standing up here? I'm standing up here because about a year ago, I think I missed a meeting at EE Times somewhere. And the outcome of that meeting was, you're going to drive this red Chevy Volt around the country for a year and interview engineers and entrepreneurs and college engineering students and so on. And I said, okay, I guess that's a good idea. But I couldn't quit my day job, so it's been 20,000 miles, 20-something, 27 states. And we go around, we do 2, 3, sometimes 6 meetings a day. And we talk about various kinds of technologies. And then at the end of the day, we go back to the hotel and we do video editing, we do blogging. Generally, we have the TV on. And we're looking at MSNBC or Bloomberg Business or something like that. We started in July. So everything that was on TV was a debt crisis. The financial world was falling apart if we didn't fix this debt ceiling in the United States. Then that faded, and then Europe was a problem, and that was a crisis. And then it was something else for months and months and months. And we found pretty quickly that there was a disconnect. Because we'd say, well, it looks like the future's dead. It looks like innovation's dead. It looks like economies are about to collapse. But yet we're talking to guys like this all day long for months and months and months. And never was heard a discouraging word, as the song goes. Because they had products coming out in 9 months, in 12 months, in 24 months that were innovative, evolutionary, interesting stuff that was going to change something, either big or small. But yet the feedback that we got from mass media was, the game's over. So we wanted to explore that question, and I found these 4 guys on the road in various places, and I thought they'd be good panelists because they represent 4 different parts of the kind of innovation puzzle. Dave Lentz is the design chain guy. And so he sits at the nexus between design and implementation. And we did a panel at Avnet's office in southern New Jersey, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. And you also owe me for a parking ticket that we got on the Volt in Philadelphia, so that's your penance.
Probably got to read those signs a little closer, but
I think so.
It's kind of just a way we welcome you to Philadelphia, is what it is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not sure we're going back. Jeff Lawson, longtime design engineer, has a very cool wireless design and a very cool story because the idea for this came out of a friendship that he has, a longtime friendship with a hockey coach. And their very passionate concern, if you talk with him offline, you'll see how passionate about it he is, very passionate concern about head trauma for youth sports. And so there was an interesting story there that we wanted to bring up.
Sorry, I got nothing. What am I here for?
You're here for fun and giggles.
Okay, sounds good.
And then Rich Szczepkowski is a second-generation electronics manufacturing executive. Your dad started the company in the 60s in New Jersey. And so he's got the contract manufacturing, offshoring, onshoring, what's going on there. Is electronics manufacturing dead in the United States? And then James Truchard, Dr. T, founded National Instruments many, many years ago. You're celebrating, what, your 40th?
35.
35 this year. And so I thought it would be interesting. We're giving him a lifetime, you and Jeff Kodosky from National Instruments, we're giving you an EE Times Lifetime Achievement Award tonight at the ACE Awards. And I thought you'd have an interesting perspective because you made an idea, a company, and then you made that company run for 35 years, which, is not easy. So I'm going to start with the obvious question. Do we believe what we see on TV every night, that innovation's dead and we're doomed? And then we'll go from there.
Well, I hope not. I have to get a new job, right? Because that's kind of what I'm chartered to do at Avnet, is to not necessarily product innovation, but really shrinking that cycle time for new products to get them to market. Is it dead? I think it's just burgeoning. Every day I get an email from a website called Simply Hired that tells me that there's 11, 12, 13 new Director of Innovation jobs out there that have been posted on the general site. So,
Director of Innovation.
yeah, so I see pretty consistent, effort to kind of drive that. And we're a service business. Traditionally, innovation's been focused on products, consumer products, electronic products, but it's edging into the services realm as well. So I don't think it's dead at all.
I want to jump to Dr. T to just sort of give us the 4-decade perspective, if you will, because you've seen ups and downs, cycles left and right, and you've managed to stay competitive and build a really interesting culture down there in Austin. What's your take?
So my take is innovation isn't dead. It's just moved around a bit. So you have to understand where it is and how it works and make certain it's focused on problems that are important to society. Obviously, we've seen the ecosystem, the iOS ecosystem, that now I understand there's something like 1 billion apps that have been built on this ecosystem. So ecosystems play a big role in understanding those ecosystems and how they, what role they're playing. It's very important to see that innovation stays alive and well.
But the landscape's a lot different today than it was 35 years
That's
ago.
right. That's right. Certainly,
there's India, there's Asia.
I point out that in the instrumentation business, vacuum tubes reigned for some 45 years in instruments. We had General Radio, really one of the pioneers in instrumentation. Then it moved to transistors and integrated circuits, and now it's moved to software. So the ecosystem changed, the environment changed, and instrumentation, in our case, just moved to a new place. And that's in the software realm, where we know now software is pervasive throughout what we do.
Rich, your family, your dad started the company a long time ago. Let me be blunt, why isn't the company dead? There's a lot of contract manufacturing in this country, and a lot of it doesn't exist anymore, but you do. Why?
Well, there's always been a market for the smaller manufacturers with startup companies and things of that nature, or when it comes to security and Department of Defense and whatnot, things have to be controlled and manufactured in the States. But what we're trying to do these days is, if there's 3 different markets, so to speak, the low, medium, and high volume. It was about 9 months ago we installed a large amount of high volume manufacturing equipment to try to start tackling that second tier and to see if we can't bring it back from overseas. And we got a lot of interest from people that are already overseas. How can we bring it back and whatnot? And it was looking a lot more competitively from a financial standpoint, and you get away from the quality issues and dealing with overseas and dealing with a lot of times bad quality. But nothing ever gelled in the sense of people didn't want to break that habit and bring it back. What we now have found 9 months into it is, as we design new products for a lot of our customers, we're now able to stop it from going overseas to the next level, to that next volume, so that at least we can grow manufacturing here. Difficult to bring it back because once it's set up, they kind of like to leave it over there. It's difficult to manipulate everything. It was very difficult to get it over there in the first place. So we're finding that we can grow ourselves in technology by getting the more sophisticated equipment. We implement lean manufacturing every several years. We refresh all the employees with lean manufacturing and what's new today and things of that nature.
Jeff, talk a little bit about your perspective as a design engineer. 2 guys with an idea bringing a product to market. Years ago, you needed venture capital, you needed mentoring, tutelage, you needed all kinds of stuff.
I think all that stuff is still true today. It'd be nice to have all of that. I think that what I heard 2 different things here was, I heard Dave say hopefully, and I heard that we were trying to pull things and so forth and push things into roles. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how we fit in all that stuff. You know, that from a design perspective, I'm caught in the best of both worlds, or the worst of both worlds, no matter which way you look at it. I'm just trying to get a product done that fills that need, that I can build and sell to fill that need, and make enough money so that I can make that next level product that fills the next level lead. So it's a progressive kind of thing. And so what I'm dealing with is you know, I have an idea, I got a buddy comes to me, we talk about it, you have a beer, you say, yeah, we'll do this, and go gangbusters on it. And then, you know, the next step is prove it out. Is a proof of concept right? As soon as I establish a relationship with a particular set of vendors, I spend, 20% of my day or 30% of my day fielding calls. Hey, can I get my content on your board? Can I do this? And so, everybody's trying to be aggressive and be able to make that stuff happen. Then if I actually do choose who I want to be able to associate with, then I go to distributors and I try and facilitate getting those devices in on my product. And then I try and transition it into manufacturing. And I feel this silo that every time I try and go from one place to the other, I meet with, well, this is what you should have done. This is the advice I have for you. This is where you should have been, and those kind of things. So I struggle with the effort of team building with this cohesive unit of supply chain and design and aggregating all of those things together to be able to manufacture and sell it in the marketplace. And then the other thing that we're dealing with is that we have a global marketplace. And so if we have a product that we're selling just to America, is America, made in America, the most important thing? If I'm selling a product to Canada, is made in Canada the most important thing? And so we kind of thought about it in those terms and really tried to put forth a plan to be able to implement that such that we could capitalize on that need and then fill the void.
So you can do design a lot faster today than you could when you started out as an engineer. But there must be some frustrations, right? There's always frustrations.
There's a lot of frustrations because, some of the times that you go through a development process, and typically what happens is there's reference designs, you align yourself with particular vendors, you get the reference design, you try and take that reference design and change it to your particular application, you do some prototypes, and each time you do a prototype, you make a mistake, you didn't think about something, then you're geared with, I gotta do this real fast now again, and then you start spending money. And so it's just that pressure of getting that stepping stone that leads you towards the end product. All the time focusing on that end date that says, I gotta have all this done by March 31st, 2012.
Right.
That's my biggest pressure.
So I want to ask my bookends here, if you will, because you run big companies, or you're you either run or you're part of a big company. People in big companies tend to focus on their thing, and they just kind of do their thing. But innovation is all about thinking differently, getting out of your comfort zone, being risky. How is that? How do you encourage that? We'll start with Dr. T. How do you encourage that as your company gets bigger?
Well, it starts from the top, and it's really about giving permission to innovate. And it's easy to kill that permission by just the wrong words in the wrong place. So having an environment where you truly have the flexibility to innovate. In our case, it's very critical that you're innovating in the vision. So we place a lot of emphasis on really working hard to get our vision of a disruptive position in the marketplace well understood by the organization, and then seeing that the right folks have permission. And then, of course, the ecosystem environment that you work in plays an additional role of having the right things in the right places so that it's possible for innovation to take place.
Dave?
Yeah, absolutely has to come from the top. I mean, we have it listed. If you've ever seen Avnet's core values, innovation is definitely part of that, either structured or unstructured, if you will. As we've gone through, evolution in the years in consolidating our distribution industry, some things just happen, and we kind of find a way around it, and then it opens up other opportunities. I would tell you, for us, looking at adjacent industries and opportunities, if you follow Avnet, you'll see some of the recent acquisitions are launching us into the reverse repair logistics business and the reclamation, because there's a lot of equipment out there that needs something to do, and it's a natural follow-on for our managing products throughout the whole product life cycle, from concept through design to NPI, production, supply chain services, and then maturity and reclamation. So we kind of look in that space. If you had to ballpark what we provide for any size of customer, it's inventory and assets for them to manage their supply chain, as well as the infrastructure to get that through. And in the near future, you'll see that coming through as we start to partner with venture capital to bring startups and products to markets a lot faster than than what's been traditional. So some new frontiers for us that we're hedging into.
I want to drill into that a little bit more because we're endlessly fascinated with companies like Apple that eat their young basically. Dr. T spoke to this a little bit. I read a story in the Wall Street Journal not long ago that said innovation empowerment schemes that companies implement to nurture that are basically horse crap. They don't work. They don't work if it doesn't come from the top. Rich, at a smaller family-run company, how do you deal with it?
We've actually brought it to the level of all employees. It doesn't matter where you stand in the chain. We have what we call an and-on light system or a yellow light system. So at any time, an employee for any reason, and they literally every work cell and every area throughout the facility has a pole with a red, yellow, and green light on there. And if you see the green light, everything's working fine. But if at any time an employee feels that there's something wrong, whether it just comes to how they're tooling or they're not satisfied with something that they're using, or that they know the product's going together improperly, they can turn from green to yellow and stop the system. And we've actually found for years and years we would always measure everything through the facility all month long. The next month, halfway through the month, we sit down, have a meeting, talk about it, and what good does it do you, because that all happened last month. And you try to fix it for the next time so maybe it doesn't happen. And what we found with the yellow light program is we're stopping rejects, problems, or issues 1, 2, 3 pieces into it, which is dropped our rejection rates and improved our quality tremendously. So I like it. We've been doing it for close to 10 years now. We've gotten several grants from our state to do different types of lean processes and procedures over the years, and we just keep implementing that, and it's working great. And it took a while. It actually took a couple of years for people to start speaking up, but then it started to get a little competitive. We'd pat somebody on the back that spoke up a couple times, and then all of a sudden, everybody else wants to feel good about putting their knowledge back into the company. I mean, they're the ones making it. They know what's wrong. They know how to fix it.
And you have some system to reward risk, not an easy thing to say, reward risk, because most people don't want to do it.
Risk in what sense?
Taking risk in bringing new ideas into the environment.
It's part of the system is it's a group effort. And everything's individual, and then it's a little bit a larger team, and then a larger team as you go through cells and areas and whatnot. And what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years is that, especially with the threat of the economy that was going on, the reward or risk was that we stabilized, we stayed profitable, everybody was still able to participate in profits. And that's how we pushed it. They've always been able, we've never faltered and fallen below zero. We always kept it above zero, and then at the end of the year, been able to share with the employees.
So let's raise it up a bit, because you all have global perspectives in one way or the other. And the big fear in our readership in E-Life, E-Times, over the last 15 years has been jobs are going overseas. Jobs are going overseas. Labor costs are lower, right? The supply chain is so well lubricated now. And it's manufacturing jobs, and it's design jobs.
And the good thing is transportation costs have keep going down. I'm kidding, actually.
Well, that could be a problem going forward.
Yeah,
but
some of the pundits that kind of track, really at an EMS and circuit card assembly level, they report maybe a 60 to 70 cents per hour of labor for PC board assembly between high volume areas of Mexico versus China. They also report 15 to 17% administrative costs just to manage the overseas outsource before you get into products and those kind of things, because of conference calls and travel and support for engineering there. So, and with the cost of transportation, it's almost becoming irresponsible to manufacture in another region or hemisphere to try and move that finished good back to a location. So I think we're seeing a lot of that kind of vetting through, and people saying, well, I know we save some money, we save overhead typically, we save on some extrusions and those high dollar pieces. But when I'm talking PC board assembly, that's automated. I mean, it's pretty close. So we see a lot of folks, I don't say a lot of folks, but many of our larger customers are looking to have a more, and this kind of comes to the risk of the environment, a more distributed network of supply to kind of insulate themselves from some of the supply chain shocks that have recently happened. So
it's interesting that we've talked to a lot of contract manufacturers, and the cost thing does come up, and the turnaround time on prototyping comes up. Carbon footprint has not come up at all. So that doesn't seem to be working as kind of an incentive to get people to manufacture at home. But I want to talk to you guys and sort of hopefully instigate a little cage match here, because
here it goes.
Because we had a really good time at dinner last night on this topic. Jeff is just back from China, where you went to a bunch of different factories, and you're going to manufacture your wireless sensor in China, and that makes Rich not really happy.
That's exactly right. Rich and I have had a throwdown, and he said to me a couple times, "Don't start nothing, won't be nothing." He's accused me of all kind of bad things, and voting Democrat and the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, so there is a conflict of epic proportions between us, partially because I'm design and he's manufacturing, and he's going to want me to do things that I already don't want to do, and he's going to force me to do that. But in order for him to do that, I want him to admit certain things, which by nature he won't ever admit. And so that's kind of where we stand. There was on this big wall drawn up between us that I can't see how we could ever, solve that problem.
Well, and I guess we had too brief of a conversation last night, because the biggest strategy that we have as a manufacturer is partnerships. Back in the day, it was always anything the customer said, and this is the way it's going to happen, and they would drill down to everybody below them. The culture we have changed in at least our company is 50% of what I do is material. This guy right here is my biggest partner. He and I have got to be on the same team. Any hiccup he has is a problem for me. So we have a great relationship with our supply chain. We make sure, and as I was saying, a lot of people won't do that. And that's exactly what we do, because we'll find out issues first. We'll find out if there's going to be supply issues with parts or whatever. We might be able to line ourselves up to get certain supplies before others and whatnot. The next part of our infrastructure that is the most important is the employee then. So that's my team. And then what we relay to the customer is, we are your arm. We are part of your body. You tell us what you need, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out how to do everything. Rely on us for this. I'm not quite sure what we would tell you to do.
Well, I
mean, customer is king, so I would never do that.
Oh yeah, the first thing that I would say is that's my team too. I mean, because that's what we did. We had a global model, and the model was such that wherever we needed to manufacture, we could take what we had put in place, drop it in that location. We've created a partnership with our team, right? The partnership starts with Avnet. We've asked them to create a bill of material structure, which we know the price of. We've locked that down so that if it's global, the price we pay here is the same price we pay every place else for selected parts. We've stocked that area for them to be able to deliver our parts to whomever we choose to be able to manufacture that. We've partnered with Analog Devices and NXP, and they've signed in to deliver to us this technology in the form that we needed to be delivered in, and the quantities that we needed to be delivered in. We've partnered with Eurotech to be able to develop a platform for us to be able to talk to. And so we want to take that and deliver that to whomever we want to build the product at the time that we need it built, depending on what the bandwidth is. And so when I have this design all completed, I'll take it to a manufacturer and I'll say, okay, I want you to build that. And then they want me to change my design. They want me to change my pad geometries. I got to put test points down. I got to put.
Well, what if
tooling
that's all
holes
for
in.
good cause and good reason? Because by not doing that, you will entice more rejects into the final production line. And why would you want to have hiccups further down the road?
I perfectly understand
when
that.
we already know we went through that with 1,000 other customers, and we know you're going to create shorts or whatever in the product.
Yeah, so that's the
as
thing that
manufacturing
I have
starts.
this big concern about which is, can you build the product without defects on it? Why do I have to put forth a test
Not when
strategy?
it's designed improperly, no.
So
see, this is the battle between production
That's
and
what I'm saying,
engineers.
is that I go to other people, they
Which
say,
is why we partner on
can
that.
do
Bring us in while you're designing before it becomes hard paper, before it becomes hard art. We can
At what
influence.
level? I've already got a product done, and now you're telling me you can't build my stuff unless I
These
put
are lessons
that
that
in.
need to be learned. So the next product you come out with, we would partner up front.
Why would I do that, though? I may not choose you next time.
That's
You
what,
wanna be-
that's what you should
you-
choose
you
in
wanna-
a partner,
you wanna-
somebody who's willing to do that
But you
with
want to pay for that. You want me to pay for your engineering effort. You want me to fund you so that you can learn from
Actually,
from me.
our design for manufacturability, we offer free to our customers.
So do you design for test, design for assembly, design for manufacturing, and all those things?
Right.
For free. So if I bring you my product right now, you'll completely redesign it for me,
Right. If you-
give it
if
back
you-
to me,
correct.
and then I can put it back in my package. No matter what physical constraints that you put on me, I can put it back in my same package.
Correct.
Okay.
But with the caveat that we want the manufacturing.
Okay, so what if I don't give you the manufacturing?
Well, then
Then
why do
you
I
charge
want to
me?
talk to you?
Well, I've developed a project on the fact that I might be able to sell it. Don't you want to be a part of my team? I mean, they signed in to be a part of my team.
Yeah,
All
when
right,
you sign that check and mail me a check in the mail, that's the part of the
Okay.
team I would like
So
to
it all
be with,
comes
too.
back down to money then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I want a little wisdom injected in here, because Dr. T's sitting there looking like, I've heard this argument for 35, 40 years.
Well,
What's
certainly-
your strategy on this, and how do you manage your
Well, we manufacture internally, so globally as well. And of course, being a test-oriented company, we have good test technology that we try to apply both using in-house, where we try to eat our own dog food, as we would say, and then to our customers. So basically, our goal is to really obviously have good design practices, and because we have internal manufacturing, we're constantly doing what these gentlemen are speaking of trying to get feedback on how to better manufacture it. We do design for manufacturing runs so that we make sure we've got the design where it's buildable, and sometimes we're still challenged.
If you were Jeff, what would you do?
Good question. In our case, if I were Jim back in 35 years ago, we built it in-house. So, and we've continued to do that ever since. Obviously, as you go to volume production, you have to look at that, and it's an individual decision. In our case, our decision was to build in-house.
So you've been able to keep it here, too.
Right.
So I think that market, I mean, there's a lot of parameters that go into this, making that decision. The market you serve, the location where you're going to sell your product, all those kind of things need to kind of come into play when you select those partners. So in a consumer good, it's, one that's tied to such an interesting high level issue these days with respect to concussions and concussed children. I would say that I don't know where the governments and healthcare governance is going to come in from the FDA or something like that, but that's a whole different side bet. But
there's two parts. There's the design, and then there's manufacturing. One of the challenges U.S. has faced is over the last decades, we've imported a lot of graduate students from all over the world as students because there weren't enough graduating from wanting to go into technical areas. And in the early days, that worked pretty well. Now, with these emerging economies emerging, folks can go back home. And so the rules that worked 40 years ago or 30 years ago don't work as well as they used to. So that's a big challenge I see in the U.S.
Let's up-level it yet again, because part of innovation is being competitive and always improving your productivity, finding efficiencies in your process, and so on and so forth. But there comes a time when the government wants to nurture or encourage some type of technology. We've seen it a lot with green technology in the last few years. And then you end up with situations like Solyndra, for instance, which is a hot political topic and will be until the election's over, I'm sure. Where do you guys fall in terms of government picking technological winners?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I'd rather they just stay out of everything. It's the innovators, and I would think, amongst us, that's what we're trying to do. We want to reinvest in our companies. We want to do certain things. We understand guidelines and rules when it comes to safety and things of that nature. That makes complete sense, but we don't understand why a lawyer would be telling a business how to run, or lawyer meaning politician and people of that nature that aren't people that are in the industry.
But the government will subsidize certain things, right? Commercial airlines, runways, highways, all that sort of stuff. So it's encouraging certain behaviors. What's wrong with doing that in technology and doing grants for green energy technology?
What I want from my government is to break down my market barriers. I want to be able to have my product to be sold anywhere I want to be able to sell my product. I want to be able to sell my product in the United States. I'd like to be able to sell my product in Brazil, in China, wherever that the product has a need for us to be able to do. And that's what I want from my government. I want them to be socially and financially, fiducially responsible to recognize that if there's tariffs that are out there, that we don't create a manufactured United States only at all cost. That I want them to say, yeah, that there is a global marketplace. We need to manufacture where we manufacture, but the product that we manufacture has to be sellable globally as well without the incumbency of tariffs and you can't get into this market. That's what I want from my government.
Well, I just attended a conference that this very topic was at the beginning. So in clean energy and conserving energy and so forth. And I saw lots and lots of entrepreneurs investing their money, venture capitalists investing their money, even Bill Gates doing TerraPower with the traveling wave fission reactor. So certainly there's been a lot of private investment and seems to be a very lively community for that. And one of the most significant energy things, and you may it's controversial, of course, is fracking, where that was almost every nickel that was ever spent on research and development over the last 50 years was privately funded. So, and that's the most significant trend that's in the last 5 years that's totally changed the energy picture in the United States. That doesn't solve all the carbon footprint problems, but it does significantly change the energy picture. All of virtually every dime was privately funded. So that's an example. On the other hand, we've kind of shut off funding and research on nuclear power. So it's if we had cell phones that were the same technology as our nuclear power plants, they'd be big as suitcases. So we basically haven't had much innovation. So I see government's role at the very front edge of innovation, the basic science, the basic research. And I think that's been lacking over the last 40, 50 years. We simply haven't invested enough in fundamental research. It's been driven forward in areas we know, like semiconductors, for example, but other areas, it's been short of where we should be. So I say fundamental research is certainly in the realm. You might call it pre-competitive research as an area where you need, we don't have the Bell Labs anymore, so we have to have alternatives for that, and I see the government playing a role there.
So when we visited SWEMCO, we had a very interesting meeting with some representatives of your local congressman. And for 45 minutes, I watched you talk at this level, and they talked at this level, and it was like you guys were talking in completely different languages. That seems to be a fundamental communication problem when we want to encourage R&D, we want to, encourage PhD students to stay once they get degrees here, so on and so forth. How do we deal with that?
The monster is too big. I don't know how to solve or resolve the size of the government. It's something that should quietly and slowly go away. I mean, I agree, if at least they're spending the money in the technology sector, that gives us all a great boost, and that is a good thing to our pockets, but I don't see why, whether it was roads, this, that, or the other, that they have to constantly influence the situation. I don't think that was what they were meant to be here for. I feel it's us who should be taking care of things. Now, you know, when you're discussing the people from the congressman's office, I had met him actually prior to that, and you know, they say they're on the same page, but politicians are politicians, and everything they say does not answer the question that you asked. The people that were there the latest time that you were there, I guess, were trying to answer for the congressman, but it's basically a matter of do they get it or don't they get it. I think their job is not fixing the country, it's fixing themselves. The government is out of control. If they would fix themselves and go back to the basics of the reason we started a government, it would make a lot more sense.
Good luck.
I thought the larger challenge is, credit of the applause there. Anybody here apply for an SBA loan? Well, if you did, or any kind of government assistance kind of program, the documentation and the bureaucracy to get that done is absolutely hindering, and quite frankly, for entrepreneurs like yourselves, you just don't have the time to deal with it. So that's why I think a lot of it goes privately funded, and they just go do it and figure out a way to do it, and that's where venture capital is swelled. And the government's happy to sit back and look at technology through any of the programs, the SBIR program or the DOD or the NSA can call you up and say, hey, we'd like to meet you on Friday. We'll see you down at the fort. And right. You have to be there, right? So they'll help guide you in that kind of way. But I think the bureaucracy to kind of go and drive innovation through the government has been one of the bigger challenges to kind of really just streamline, because it's not like we have forever and a day to bring out new products and services, right? I mean, it's got to hit a market site. So,
I'm going to open it up to questions. I think we have microphones out here, but I want to touch on education because Dr. T talked a little bit about education. You know, you look at the charts and graphs that get thrown all over the place, and you see American engineering graduates, you see Indian engineering graduates, and then you see Chinese engineering graduates. And the raw numbers are pretty daunting. Do you think that's a problem, number one? Number two, how do we fix it? Or number three, are we turning out fine engineers who are hyper productive and it's not a problem at all?
Well, we certainly turn out a lot of fine engineers. I would say that first. On the other side of the coin, it's kind of what society drives folks to. Look at Wall Street and how much innovation, in quotes, we had there. Look at the legal field. A lot of innovation there. Then the question is, what benefit is society getting from that innovation? We like to talk in terms of the National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenges. Obviously, people have to be inspired to be engineers, and that's a big challenge. So we've worked with, for example, Dean Kamen with his FIRST program that works all the way from grade school up through high school with his with FIRST Lego League and then FIRST Technical Challenge into FIRST Robotics. And these are programs really trying to get kids excited about engineering and what we can do. And that's key. And obviously there's a lot of distractions in the U.S. For achieving that goal.
And I think, just personally, that the tools and sometimes the toys that are available to young kids today can serve that inspiring need. But is it enough, really? Because an engineering degree is 4 years. Some people say it should be 5 because it's so damn hard.
Well, kids start out as engineers. You put some blocks in front of them, they'll stack up and build something. We kind of teach it out of them. So that's a challenge in itself, getting people to be excited about engineering.
Well, and the jobs aren't here. What the countries you're mentioning are where the jobs are in that field, in those fields, and technology fields too. So that's why people may be coming here to get an education, but are going back there because that's where all the jobs are, because we've chased it away.
Is there any hope for turning that around?
I can't answer for the world, but that's what I'm trying to do in my little world. You know, I'm trying to grow the business, and I want to become one of the big guys. And you know, we're reaching that middle range of size, and I would love to continue it going and turn it over to the next generation, and let's see what they can do.
Dave, what are you guys seeing? I mean, you have a pretty robust internship program I've seen, at least down in Phoenix. What's your take?
I mean, from our perspective, so we try and engage at the very early level of careers of our engineering future customers / partners, and we're actually rolling out an emerging group that is really only going to focus on calling on smaller customers to help them be more business advisors as opposed to just kind of trying to design in the best chip for them, to kind of help them kind of migrate and move in that direction. And a lot of those small companies are started by guys like Jeff and Tim, his partner, that are small companies that need a lot of this other support, you know, other than just kind of designing their products. So on the grand scale, we have certainly programs, and ours tend to lean in towards the execution programs from supply chain perspective.
I need to amplify just one thing, that our storefront is small, but our backbone is great. And the reason is when we went off and we started trying to put together this team, we realized that there were certain things that we couldn't do. And so that's when we had to go off and we had to align ourselves with a selected distributor and selected manufacturers to kind of form this team. And luckily for us, they've kind of bought into that, and they've kind of guided us through what we needed to be able to do. Sometimes they led, sometimes they followed, but they were always a teammate there for us. So you know, that's the real thing that I wanted to amplify on what we're saying there is that people start off as engineers, but they also start off as artists, but the rules kind of take that out of them.
What? Okay.
It looks like we have a question from the audience.
Is this on? Yeah, George Leopold with EE Times. So all of you operate in a global market. To what extent are foreign governments a problem for you in terms of, you know, massive subsidies that really tilt the competitive landscape against you?
Well, if you look at one of the largest opportunities out there, certainly Brazil, South America, very well respected for their ability to kind of isolate their markets. Trying to move material, if you haven't dealt down there, trying to move material in and out is subject to extreme duties and fees. And once you put product down there, you'll probably never get it back because it just costs too much to ship it back. So, you know, what the State Department is doing to try and thin that out, that's not my purview. But certainly, I think if you give us enough time, us and our colleagues in the industry will kind of figure out the way to do things. And we're starting to, again, emerge down in Brazil as a little bit different company than we usually set up in our other entity states.
I just came back from China, and we toured a couple different plants there for different technologies and so forth. And there is a grassroots effort in their activity to be able to develop and originate product. Their mindset has been that they are perceived in the world as copiers and bootleggers, that they're real good at building stuff, they can reverse engineer, but there is a phenomenal grassroots effort on their part to be able to do what we're talking about here, which is substantiate the design, be able to originate it, figure out the need, and implement it. And so that's my view.
Looks like we have another question out there.
Yeah, marketing. I'd certainly agree with the panel that our regulators and government need more highly tuned sensors and much better error correction. And I see those as two missing components of that puzzle. Sensors, error correction code. My question is as commercial lithography slams into the dampening effects of applied science, what's that mean for the producer channels? Will we see more time to make enough money today to pay for tomorrow?
Who wants to tackle that one?
I'm not sure I followed.
Can you run the question by again?
Yeah.
I kind of missed one.
Sure, it seems to me that from the standpoint of the production chain, the supply chain, that there'll be less incentive to run along the treadmill in rampantly accelerated pace. And as commercial lithography dampens, given the hurdles of get to hybrid technologies, Will that allow systems houses to spend more time working on products with the components we have today because those component companies aren't moving their designs to the next process? Do you see that happening? Is there going to be more of a dampening effect, and will that lithography slowing down create a more stable environment to design products in that perhaps have greater longevity on the components that are currently spec'd in them?
I see the role of ecosystems being very, very important. We see that with various semiconductor manufacturers. You mentioned how you work with a set of suppliers. They really give you a leg up. So these ecosystems are giving the end user a leg up, whether it's a very high volume smart mobile device where you get a complete reference design from the chip designer onto, in our case, where we serve the lower volume, more experimental, like alternative energy, flying kites, for example, to generate energy, where they use our off-the-shelf ecosystem with tremendous design capability built in, where within weeks they can literally put together complex systems. So ecosystems can be built in this way, and that's where I think maturing will take place as we see Moore's Law more challenged.
I think that one of the things, I know if I heard that correctly, but maybe just want to weigh in, that we're embarking upon new technologies to be able to build. You know, we've primarily developed an XY scenario where it's built in a singular plane, and now we have to start talking about the Z-axis and building in Z planes and so forth as well. And there's some emerging technologies that we need to capitalize on. MEMS devices, 3D printers, the ability of running traces in the Z-axis and so forth. And so that type of technology would be able to differentiate what we're going to be able to build. Then the question would be, is where do we do that at? And I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I remember a conversation that Steve Jobs had last year in which he was challenged by the president as to why we didn't build the iPad and the iPhones in the United States. And the conversation evolved around, was it a cost problem? And the answer was that Jobs said was, no, it's not a cost problem, that we can't build it in the United States. We don't have the technological fiber to be able to do that. And after you get through being really upset about that, I mean, which you are, I mean, here's these captains of industry that are saying that we don't have the forethought and the technological ability to facilitate a product, even if we wanted to. Then you start thinking about how right were they? Do we have to have a fundamental approach at a grassroots level, just like offshores does, to be able to do those same kind of things? And I think that's, if I understood some of that there's an organic level that we have to provide ourselves with that says, at that grassroots level, we have to think about that and implement it, as opposed to just discuss it.
So I'm gonna wrap this up in the interest of time, and thank you guys for being our innovation guinea pigs here. As part of the Drive for Innovation, we've torn down a Chevy Volt. Hopefully you've seen some of the promotional stuff on this. And we're going to show off the results of the teardown all the way to the board level. We've decapped some components. We're doing that today, tomorrow, and Thursday. And on the driveforoinnovation.com site, we're still rolling around the country in another Chevy Volt. We'll be in the Silicon Valley for the next 2 weeks. We'll be doing this until July, and I'm the lucky guy who gets to talk to hundreds more innovators like you. So I want to thank you for your time, thank the audience for its time, and let's get back to Design West.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for having us.